Okay, trig graphing review. The first graphing problem here, we have negative cosine of 2x plus pi over 2. So we're graphing all of these without a calculator. The trickiest thing is to deal with phase shifts. Remember, with each equation, you're going to use every part. So the first thing is that my parent function is cosine. So if my parent function is cosine, then this is going to look like a jump rope, right? Something like that. We're going to go max to max or min to min if we have a reflection. But it's good to kind of have that normal cosine graph in mind before you start. The other thing I see is this negative out front. So there's no other number out front, but that negative out front is going to be a reflect over the x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. We'll just work this from left to right. So reflection is going to be an x-axis reflection. And then that's going to take our jump rope and turn it upside down. So doing that reflection, then you're going to start at a minimum. So this is kind of what we're starting with here, upside down jump rope. Let me get rid of this other one so it does not confuse us. All right, next piece is this 2 in front of our x. So the 2 in front of our x, you can do one of two things. You can do 2 pi divided by your number in front of x to give you the period of your function. So that means the period of our function would be pi. The other thing that you can do there is think about your transformation rules. If we had a number in front of our x, we would take the reciprocal of it, so that 2 would become a 1/2. So this would be a horizontal shrink by 1/2. A horizontal shrink by 1/2 is going to take 2 pi and make it into pi. So either way you want to think through that. Let's go back and look at our amplitude. Since we didn't have any number in front of x, our number in front of cosine besides 1, our amplitude is going to be 1. We don't have any vertical displacement. We don't have anything out here moving this up or down. So you can put NA there. You can put a line through it. You can leave it blank. The last thing we need to deal with before we graph is our phase shift, and that's the trickiest part. So to do the phase shift, when you have a number in front of x, when you have a period other than 2 pi for cosine and sine, you need to do one of two things. You need to either factor out the 2, or you need to divide your plus pi over 2 by 2. And you do the same math for either of those. We called this C over B when we did this in class, unless we were talking factoring, but again, it's the same math. So our pi over 2 is what we're going to be dividing by 2. So that gives us pi over 4. And since it's a plus in the middle there, we know that's going to be pi over 4 to the left. So our upside down jump rope is going to start pi over 4 to the left. I'm going to go ahead and make myself a little dotted line there. So since my big jump here, 2 spaces is pi over 2, so 1 space is going to be pi over 4. And I need to start at a minimum. And my amplitude is 1, so I'm going to start down 1. The period of my function is pi. So if I start at pi over 4, here pi is 4 boxes. So I'm going to go from my left pi over 4. Sorry about that. From my left pi over 4, I'm going to go 4 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. One period of my function is done by, that would be 3 pi over 4. And then I'm just going to follow my pattern. So if I have my little sketch up here, halfway in between my minimums, I'm going to have a max. So halfway in between my minimums, I'm going to have a max. And my amplitude is 1. And halfway in between my min and max, I'm going to go through the x-axis, or go through the midline. So there's one period of the function, and of course, you could finish that out. Generally, we want to graph every every point that would fit in both directions. Fill the graph paper that you're given. This one's nice because you're doing a little dot every box. Here our domain is all reals and our range is -1 to 1. Again, I don't care what notation you use there, but just make sure your notation is correct, whether you're using step builder notation or interval notation. I use interval notation in both cases on the key and. All right, that's number 1. Or actually, that's number 3A. That's our first example.